I think at the end, it should be a motivation for the employee that everybody can see he or she has done something and get something done. And if you have a regular call in which the people come together and present their results, this is motivating them and driving them to more results and more engagement and motivation.
It's a tricky one because when we say that we trust people,
we had remote working during the pandemic times. And how does this change the way of working, and how do you manage these new normal?
So definitely new normal is the right word, because when we look at the way the pandemic has disrupted, okay, that's a disruption in the true sense. So people talked about digital before and said that, digital will disrupt, but nothing disrupted better than the pandemic. We all know that. So for us, so during the time of pandemic, the first thing that happened was the inability to see employees face to face. So the lack of visibility of what people are doing, because typically in an office you get to see everything. So there was a sense of discomfort that you're no longer able to see people. And there was a lot of skepticism that whether people are going to be really productive or work or put the required amount of output. But what we really found is, surprisingly, that the productivity hours actually shot up during the pandemic when people are working from home. Also, when you say the new normal, there were people, there were families, and the interruptions, whether it is pets or whether it's children, all the family members, that became a normal thing to see people. And the classic thing of people wearing formal on the top and pajamas on the at the bottom, that became a common thing. But what does it really say is the most important thing that happened was work and life got integrated. Work and life got merged. So that to me is the biggest change that has happened, number one. Number two, when you say the new normal, everything happens digitally. Everything. Even if I have to catch up with someone and I want to have a cup of coffee with them, I will call them, I'll go on Teams or whatever is my technology, and I'll ask them, are you free? And then we log in and then we talk to one another. So that has changed, the informal chats, the informal meetings.
So I think I completely agree with Geeta, in terms of the changes that have been brought upon. But I think with this new normal, the more integration between work and life gave rise to additional complexities as well. And that is not just in terms of how people operate, in a remote environment, but it also, gave rise to certain complexities around style of working, right? Because people had to shift from, let's say, a 9 to 5 water cooler conversation sort of working, physical proximities, to maybe in an environment wherein 80% or 90% of your workday involves screen time. So which created a lot of complexities around additional stress, right, which comes with, I would say, this sort of digital uh, overheating, I would say, right, and additional stress gave, rise to problems around anxiety, depression, etc., etc. And there was not just one industry which started seeing these problems, but it started happening across the industries. Hence, there had to be a lot of focus around mental health and wellness, because if everyone started getting involved, in a digital screen, for about 12, 13 hours, the lines became blur, right? I mean, we were not spending that amount of time that we used to, which ultimately was a lot of stress buster. So with this new normal, additional complexities crept in, which was a big challenge for HR professionals, across the globe and across industries. So I think, with everything, uh, uh, there comes certain things, as additional complexities. While there was a lot of opportunity in terms of doing things better, being more productive, being more, I would say, omnipresent in a remote environment, but coupled with certain complexities that all of us had to solve. Over to you, Rolf.
So what I hear is, on one hand, we have the flexibility, and people can show up sometimes in their pajamas, of course, but they also can take care of the family and they can do their work, and the productivity is going higher. And by the way, GP, I'm also a certified coach, so I'm seeing much more people coming to me because of this digital world and not having direct connections to the other people, and having all that screen time, and they are asking how they can come out of this permanently online stress that they have right now. So this is a very important thing. Some companies have somebody who is responsible for mental health for their people, right? Also there, I have much more people and much more companies coming to me and asking, can we do this and this? What would be a good way of doing it? Definitely. So on one hand, the flexibility and better family life. On the other hand, the mental health thing. I go to Saumya to have a good mix between male and female and jumping back and forth. Anil, sorry, you are the last one. Maybe next time you are the first one. Okay, good. Saumya.
Right. So extending on what both the panel members, Geeta and JP, have said, well, yes, they have covered most of the point. But coming from gems and jewelry, for us, there was no new normal. We couldn't send so much of diamonds and so much of gold back to people's home and say, hey, make a product and send me. That was not possible. So what we did was we turned around the way that we were looking at things. And of course, the new work life that was, coming into play played a big role into it. Definitely the HR managers, their role turned from just the HRs to more of counselors and psychologists. Not only did HR managers turn the roles, in fact, managers also, the line managers also turned roles. So HR in a department also, in a way, moved from just being a passive function to being a more active and dominant function in the entire ecosystem. So that was one good change that we were seeing, and hence the journey to the boardroom has now commenced, I think, for most of the HR professionals. The second thing that we saw was up till now, we were focusing a lot on physical health and the financial health of the people. Now the focus changed to the mental well-being, or the mental health, as they say. So while we all were talking about empathy and this and that, now the emotional quotient came right to the fore, and it took its deserving place in this dynamics that we were playing and we were seeing. The units that were contributing was not just the one you would see on the pay sheet, but there was another contributor, which was the passive contributor, which was in the form of your partner or the family being. And the support that they were giving to drive this entire thing forward, believe you me, Jewellery saw the best of time during the worst of period for the mankind.
Wow.
And it is an interesting thing, because people were living together, they were forced to live together. And I think the women, their men, hey, where's my ring? So I think that worked wonderfully well for us, though it was the darkest period for the mankind. We were glittering there. So that is how things happened for us. The other thing that also took shape was we never thought that we would ever get into the space of remote working. However, we took interviews online, and that too of designers. And not only were we surprised, hey, we can do it, but we were also amazed at how well we could do it. So, that was a good pat on our shoulders. The downside, which I think, is that peer-to-peer learning, which happens when you are sitting together, that was diluted a lot. That was not happening in this space. People were not talking to each other. So how much can you rant to your wife, or a wife can rant to the husband? The ultimate thing that comes out as, hey, quit. But that's not the solution. You never quit a job, and that's never a solution. That's what we always believed in. But what happened also was that when this peer learning stopped, that is also the time we realized that the L&D department needs to also evolve to embrace these kind of changes, and how you could still be there ethereally without being there physically. And that is something that we developed in this beautiful system. So I'm still not one for that kind of a hug emoji. I still would want to go and physically give a hug. For me, that matters more than that. But still, this is how something has progressed for us in Gems and Jewelry. I'll talk more and not taking much more of your time, but as we progress, I'll give more inputs. Thank you so much.
So we have a third point of view, which I really like. It's the HR department is not just the HR department, it's also responsible for mental health. And second, also responsible for the development of the managers in the direction of taking better care of their people, and also being kind of a manager as a coach, and better listening. And learning and development, absolutely. I'm in the leadership development, HR development. Some of the parts you really can do virtual in the meantime, which I never thought you could. But now I can, right? But other parts I would never do in a virtual environment, because I need the full body. I need to feel the other person and get connected to him or her, right? So it's a new point of view. Thank you very much. Anil, what is the thing that you can add from your point of view and your interests and your industry?
Thank you. Thanks. So, I completely endorse what all the my fellow panelists spoke about. And the industry I'm representing is the manufacturing automotive industry. So, what's interesting is, so we have people on the shop floor, we have the corporate office, we also have a digital office, we have a sales office, and all the flavors of the hybrid work or the new norm we could experience here. For example, there's a set of people who are working from headquarters, and you have to come there and work, right? People on the shop floor, the people who are field, who are up there on this field, and then people who are hybrid going back and forth, and people who are actually working hybrid and remote. So we kind of experience everything, all the multiple perspectives. I thought one way to quickly sum up is to bring in this concept of how to, more in terms of how do we address this, the new normal from a new way of looking is, there's this beautiful framework called whole person paradigm. I think the big fundamental shift I see after a post-pandemic world is, before pandemic, we used to look at employees as professionals. And now the imperative, very rightly, we saw examples of CHRO has shifted, so on and so forth, is look at each one of the employee, not just as a professional, but also a whole person, which means understand how to intellectually engage them, understand how to emotionally engage with them, and providing psychological safety is the third one. And finally, engage their spirit, as in, strike the right chord, help them create that legacy. So help them create their legacy with your organization. So as long as we can touch upon those four aspects of treating somebody like a whole person paradigm, doesn't matter whether the field staff or headquarters staff or people working remotely, that's the best way to engage. And I think in bits and pieces, we're all trying. Some places successful, some are experiments we're learning. But I think for me, that's a big fundamental shift. How to apply whole person paradigm to your employee value proposition is, I think, is a good way to summarize all that we're discussing on that question.
Let me move on with the next area that we want to discuss. And this is the work-life balance. Is it really something which is still meaningful? We hear already that it gets kind of more normal because we have more flexibility. And on the other hand, which I think is a very important part, which Saumya already addressed a little bit, is how do you get enough time from your manager? And also, how do you do the career development of your people if you're more remote and less in the office?
Work-life balance, is far more matured as a concept. And I think maybe 5 years back, there used to, there used to be a lot of conversation around building balance practices, right? But as the industry has matured, and I think it's not just a function of pandemic, but I think the post-pandemic, it has actually fast-tracked the speed at which we mature, as organizations. So work-life balance sort of had to evolve into work-life integration, and I would still want to borrow this term. This had to happen with or without pandemic, but it just fast-tracked, with the context that we had in hand. So I think now for organizations, it's really important that how do we possibly solve the work-life integration aspect across industries and across segments, right? Because the operating environment has changed, and I think it is all a function of what environment are we playing in. It's largely a digital and a remote first environment. And when work-life integration has already happened, unintentionally or unintentionally, right? We have to look at, what practices do we enforce and implement, which can actually help people manage this work-life integration better. So I think a couple of things, which comes to my mind is uh, the kind of tools that we use now, has a lot of impact on how better do we manage work-life integration. Because all of us spend a lot of time on social media, all of us spend a lot of time, on phones, right? The kind of tools that we have now to ensure people learn faster, people learn better, right? The context and the variety of those tools have changed. For example, learning, right? In this context, it's more about bite-sized, quick bit learning, which is on the go, on the fly, right? Which is available to you, on your phone, when you're taking, let's say a nature break, right? So those sort of tools have become much more available to you. Information has become, far more accessible. So I think this is one aspect, which is about the variety and nature of tools, which has changed, which is now helping people, become better integrated, as far as their work life is concerned. Second aspect I would want to touch upon is enhanced focus on wellness, right? And I see a lot of organizations talking about it openly and loudly. While it was always there, but I think now, it's a buzzword, it's a focus area, it's a trend, it's a fad. We may choose to call it whatever, we want to. But I think there is inherent alignment in terms of that this is what we need to solve for, because there's huge amount of impact on us as humans and us as employees and managers. So people will need to spend time, on these aspects, and organizations need to enforce policies and practices which tells people that hey, your mental health is also important. So I would want to pick these two areas, as far as work life integration is concerned. Learning and wellness are the areas, which will need to be worked upon. We have made some progress, but I think there's still a long way to go.
Yes, I completely agree with you, JP. We started during the pandemic times with online learnings, micro learnings, also the learning of people that are younger than me, for example, more like in their 20s. They have kind of micro learnings. They are using YouTube a lot. But still, time from the management is really important to get the culture. And I want to give the word to Saumya. Maybe you have some ideas around How do you manage that the culture is getting touched?
Well, what we have developed within the ecosystem is a holistic approach, right? Now, jewelry is as ancient as mankind and as relevant as how it is today. So it has seen various evolutions, and so have the artisans, and so have the pieces, and so have the people who've worked in the industry. Now we have worked and we have graduated from a cottage industry to now corporates. And that's the journey that we have built in the industry. Now, when it comes to building cultures and especially getting this work-life balance into place, well, we also have developed certain measuring tools around it. What are the productive hours that a person, puts in, and what are the efforts that the person is putting in? Now, when we say efforts, it comes with a lot of maybe a coerced kind of, a forced kind of an attitude work, that you have to bring out so many pieces in such timeline. And the other is when you're really passionate about something, which is where the design department works. So we have to fuse the two worlds together. So A is where we have to get production out, and the other side, we have to get the ideas around. And ideas do not conform to a 9 to 5. They can come at any time. And we've given them that freedom that, hey, you can work that. Now, when it comes to the white-collar employees and the blue-collar employees who are not working on the ideation especially, so we've got the segmentation. There's the ideation team, there's execution team, and then there are people who are not supposed to think and just the mandate carrying forward team. That's the way that we have, segregated the entire organization. So now what happens is the people who are just carrying forward a mandate are working either on a piece rate or a time rate system. I'm sure Anil ji would agree to it because that's how manufacturing has evolved, whether it is assembly line or the batch production. Automobiles are in assembly line, we are mostly into the batch production. So that's how it has evolved. The other thing is that we also have got now robotics involved. So once the robots are involved, the night shift gets converted into the robot. So the robots take over the night shift, and hence they get some break and respite and not the constant churn that we were seeing, because ours is also a seasonal industry. So earlier, people used to work 2-3 shifts, and we would see the fatigue setting in. So there's a mental fatigue, there's physical fatigue as well setting in. And we would tend to make mistakes in something which is as precious as gems and jewelry, and hence we cannot afford process loss because it's a high value raw material. That's where we make money. So the work-life integration is we cut it. We were seeing people working for 10 hours. We brought it down to 5 days a week. 2 days we give them off. We also give them, holidays, paid holidays when it comes to special seasons, 5 days to 10 days of holidays. So we give 10 days Christmas vacations, go out with your families, enjoy. We give 5 to 7 days for Diwali vacations, go out, enjoy, over and above all the statutes that we are following. The other thing is you're free to work on a flexi timing. We just need you to clock in 10 hours. So if I have to go in and get my children's admissions done, like yesterday was my father's surgery. So I went home early, was there with him through the surgery, here for the podcast. I have to go and wave this because this is the Pride month, right? I have to attend a parade outside. And here we are managing everything because there are teams and there's support system. Work-life balance, a work-life integration can only come if you have a support system backing you whether it's your corporate team, whether it's your family back home, or whether it is everyone around you.
If the management and everybody in the management is showing how they work and how they live the culture, this is spreading. And if the purpose, the higher purpose is there and people want to follow and want to be part of the success, then they work anyways, right? It's like you said, it's the 9 to 5.
Adding to this, what you just mentioned, what we've also done is that we mandatorily say that, hey, if leaders go on vacations, that's how we see if the departments can function.
Yeah, absolutely.
Succession planning has worked wonderfully well for us. So today, this was the Vegas show. The entire C-suite was not there.
Yeah.
And we had blue collars. They were managing all our 7 shop floors.
Yeah.
See, I belong to the technology industry. So we work on healthcare technology at Evolent. So the one thing that, when we talk about work-life integration or whatever, flexibility is key, like Saumya mentioned, flexibility is very important. The other very important thing is also the wiring of how we manage people. So where it was very parental, like, where you check, oh, what are you doing? Why aren't you working on your homework? That is a classic old style of parenting, right? Now, when we manage today's generation, we can't go micromanage, right? We have to let them do things. We have to give them very clear responsibilities. And we just need to tell them, I need these things done. And then leave it to them to make sure that they complete it. Ask them that you need help. So the thing is, the way we allocate work, that has changed. Number one, we need to allocate work in such a way that we can circle back and make sure that people have the bandwidth to do. In our company, we have implemented an analytics tool, Sapiens. So what it does is it kind of tracks people's. So what we have done is it doesn't look at private information, but whatever is company information, whatever are the tools for the company, it identifies how many people are spending time on those tools. So that way it identifies who's productive, who's not. Now we don't use that information to pull up people, but instead, if we find somebody is overloaded, we try to balance the load out. Wherever we feel people have bandwidth, we may encourage them to do training. We encourage them. So this helps us, kind of pinpoint which teams need more help. The other very important thing of work-life integration is the fact that the way we work, for example, not all work is synchronous. So there are 2 kinds of tasks, right? One is that I need to, like this meeting, we need to be present all together. So that is synchronous, right? But if I have to review a document, I don't need to be with everyone. So if the kind of work is broken up, so we work hybrid. So once a week we come to the office. So all our water cooler conversations, all hi, hello, we are able to do that. But whenever we want to review something or we need to focus, that doesn't happen in the office because there are so many interruptions. But when you're at home, you can work at peace. And you can work at the time where you find it convenient. So when you have a baby, when you have to tend to an elderly, it makes it very easy for you to take care of that. Another very important thing is because of the commute being reduced, eliminated or reduced, my commute time that I'm saving, so I'm able to be present for my family when they need it. Okay, so this is very important to understand that the attitude and the way you manage people has to take a change because we can't manage people the way we did earlier. And the last thing I want to talk about is today people do not look at job for their making friends. So earlier, because you had to come to office and you spend 1/3 of your day at work, you had to make friends there. So if you didn't like the people there, you didn't feel that you belong, you felt unhappy because so much of the stake was in the office. But because I'm a little detached now, I don't have to know the person. So there's no office politics. I can focus on my job. I can get the work done. I can interact as much as necessary. I need to build rapport, whatever is necessary for the job. So things are very professional. For my personal joy, I'm free to do over the weekends. I can do that. I can sing, play the guitar. There is so much time for me to invest. Like I can go for a holiday. So work need not be my only means of interacting with people. So there is another shift in the way people address loneliness is they don't make everything as work. So today's generation looks at more and more ways of interacting outside of work. So those are the things when we say work-life balance, all these things also come into play.
Because of all these remote working, we already talked about culture and how do we create culture also remote. But one thing that came up is how about measuring people. And one tool is the OKR thing. Mukta, do you want to start to give an answer? How do you measure people, and how do you figure out are they doing their work and getting their goals done?
It's a tricky one because when we say that we trust people, there's a trust between the managers and the employees, then should we be really following it? But again, I work in investment banking, and for us, when you do work, it is there are results. We do have net banking income, we have projects, we have people. You can measure quite quickly about whether people have been productive or not. So for our industry, what I feel is that it's easier to measure. In fact, the two most profitable years for us were 2021 and 2022, where most of the people are working from home because you may remember that in Hong Kong, for example, we were completely shut down from the outer world compared to some of the other countries. So for me, what we felt is that it's the trust which I think is more important. It's the result which is in terms of profitability. We do not monitor people. I mean, everybody has a laptop, so of course you can come to know where their location is, what they are doing. But we made the conscious decision not to do that kind of a monitoring, but more focused on OKRs related to the deliverables. So I think that for us is more important. We do have currently flexible work, which is 2 days work from home, and also staggered hours and other flexi options that people have. For example, in my team, it's 2 days work from home and 3 days in office, but some people take more, some people take less. We have a system where people can register which days they will normally take work from home. But if they do not follow it and come to office on those days, they may not find a desk, because we also have hot desking. But for us, it is okay. We are not strict on that because we do feel that it's a choice. And as some of you mentioned, flexibility is the most important thing. People may not take it, but they want to have the choice.
Yeah. Thank you, Mukta. In my early days, I had a manager, and he always said, it's not how much time somebody spent at work, it's the result that counts. And I really like that saying, and sometimes I say this to my people, but to younger people, and saying it's not so much you're sitting in the office or you're online all day. It's more if you are there and if you work, what is the result you produce? It's not so much the time you are sitting on your desk. Yeah. Let me give the word to JP. Do you want to add something, JP?
Yeah, so I think while the operating environment has changed and more organizations and teams are distributed remote first. For example, we are more than 75-80% remote first as an organization. So that means people do not even come to office even once. So I think while the operating environment has changed, there are definitely upsides on productivity and people being in total control of what they need to be able to drive their productivity. There has been I would say a lot of dent on how do you build alignment as an organization, especially in a distributed sort of an environment, which is one of the core problems that a lot of organizations will need to solve. And for that, I believe measuring. So I would like to break this into two parts. One is alignment and the second one is measurement. So I think it's extremely important for organizations to be able to build alignment in terms of what do we want to achieve as an organization.
Yeah.
And for which I believe, OKR, has been a great tool because it sort of builds that alignment, not just at a top level, but also help cascade that alignment between functions, across functions, within functions, and different segments as well. So maybe as an organization, you align on, let's say, faster go-to-market, in a distributed workforce environment. Your ability to have everyone on the same page is far more better, uh, because you are now using a tool which gives you interdependencies, which also identifies what sort of collaboration needs are there, which was I would say missing in a very traditional sort of an environment. So I think if I deploy an OKR tool, it can help align people better, identify where are the interdependencies, and you don't need to be physically in one office to be able to align yourself, right? So that's one of the very significant shift that we have seen. So it helps you align better. Now second is, uh, if alignment is better, interdependencies are far more clear, collaboration becomes easy, right? Irrespective of where you're operating from, because then you have a very clear view and picture on what you are going to achieve and who is going to achieve. And sometimes some of these dashboard and analytics and data also helps you to have a look at it, right? So it's sort of a control room view which can tell people that, okay, if this is a goal which I was supposed to achieve, uh, as an organization, am I 50% there, 80% there? And if not, then possibly where are the gaps? And I can actually go to those stakeholders and go to related functions and possibly have far detailed conversation. So I think, but somewhere, I also agree to Mukta's point. It's not that, you are building this tool or you are leveraging this to be able to question people on trust. You do trust people enough, but I think with trust you also need to kind of build some accountability, right, towards results. So I think trust coupled with clear visibility on accountability, and also at the same time uh, measuring the results so that people feel accountable as well, is something which an OKR can do.
I completely agree with what you both said. On one hand, it's of course trust, and on the other hand, it's clearness about the goal and what we are looking for. If we are asking you to do some work, so what is our expectation to you? What are you working on? What are you building off? This is all things that help people to focus and help us to build the company and be successful. Definitely. Thank you, JP. Let me move to Anil. Anil, do you want to add something?
So I think the way I would like to sum it up is these are various tools. OKRs is actually started from Intel almost 50 years back, and then adopted and made famous by Google. So adapted to the IT industry, but these are pretty similar tools, right? Started with MBO from Peter Drucker, so on and so forth. But I think how do we tweak it to the context of the organization so people can we can drive home the culture of accountability and culture of teamwork, culture of innovation is where I think most of us are doing our work day in, day out to see how to contextualize for our culture. I think the big headline there is in a post-pandemic world, in the new norm, we need to manage through outcomes, and that's what we heard from all of my co-panelists, which I completely endorse. So,
Geeta, you want to add?
Yes.
I love to hear what you think about it.
Yes. So Rolf, the first thing is very important to understand is performance is a destination. We may use OKRs, we may use orchestrate in different ways, we cascade it, we monitor it, all that is fine. But what is the fuel? What is it that drives that performance? One very important thing is engagement. There are two big things according to me. One is engagement and the other is development. So how do we develop people? How do we keep them engaged? So that they are motivated to perform, and then we reach the end result, right? So one beauty of OKR is doing it periodically instead of just giving a goal and say, you have to build this by end of the year. Instead of that, the world is so dynamic, so we have to use chunks, like every quarter check in on people and ask that, where are we today? Do you need any help? So that kind of personal conversations with employees is very important to make sure that they are engaged, because we don't no longer have the ability to see people on a day-to-day basis and check if someone is down or someone is looking sick or someone is unhappy, we can't gauge that very easily these days. So it's very important to formalize one-on-ones. So this is one thing which we have been doing in our company is we actually have engagement surveys where we ask that when was the last time you had a one-on-one with your manager? So this is a very important thing because management, it takes conscious effort to speak to the quieter ones. We normally end up speaking to either a problem child or speaking to your star, But what about those people in the middle, right, whom you don't even see? And perceptions build. So we enforce a one-on-one. We encourage one-on-ones. We say that the more you do one-on-ones, you will be able to gauge the pulse of your people. Talent from us, the talent team, the HR team, which I manage, we take care of all our talent partners, play a very key role in embedding themselves into the various teams and employees, and they do a pulse check because they're a third party. They ask them, okay, how are things going, what's going on? So that is a very key driver for us. How do we keep people motivated and on the ball? What are the things we could do? The other is development. So when people are not able to perform on a quarterly basis, when you check, you will find that there are areas where they need support. That is where the individual development plan comes in. Rather than saying, okay, but these are your weaknesses, so you develop this over the year, we ask them, why don't you look at quarterly, what are the areas that you need to develop? And again, everything cannot be a training program, right? Because we know the 20-10 rule. So what we actually encourage people is we actually tell them that why don't you shadow someone else? Why don't you? And we encourage more collaboration. So collaboration, engagement, and development is extremely critical to keep everybody motivated and together. But these are not going to happen automatically. And we cannot no longer rely on every manager's individual styles. So there is a lot of management development that we need to do to make sure that the way you manage remote teams is a very different style of managing people, right? So we have implemented leadership programs to develop managers, and they in turn, how can they develop their people? Another very important thing which we're doing as a part of engagement and development is remote learning. So a lot of subject matter experts today, they take sessions. So while you have your LinkedIn learning, you have YouTube and all of that, but nothing beats learning from someone else, learning from a human, right? And since we cannot get people to the office and have a classroom, what we have is virtual classes. So we have experts. So there's someone in Scrum who takes a Scrum class and people attend that class. So everybody comes to know who's a mentor, who can I go to tomorrow if I'm stuck in something. So we have created subject matter expertise within the company who conduct classes as part of a stretch, assignment. They go above their work hours and they help employees to build skills. So these are the levers we need to use, according to me, to deliver performance.
I worked in big companies. We had performance management. We trained the leaders that they know how to conduct this, how to motivate their people, right, and so on. I'm completely with you. So thank you, Geeta.
Thank you, Rolf.
Saumya.
Oh, I think we have enough food for thoughts by all the August panelists. But the only thing that I would really love for the sake of the knowledge building, is that people usually tend to confuse between a PMS and an OKR. And while a PMS is absolutely targeted towards an individual, an OKR is more towards a team. And that's the difference that organizations need to understand. Also, organizations usually say, hey, I find that thing very interesting in that organization, so I want to just copy paste that entire thing in mine. But what we tend to forget is that the level in which the organization is. So if you're a level 1 organization, you cannot be a Tesla. Otherwise, they are building driverless cars. Your organization will be a driverless organization. That can't happen, right? So we have to be very careful in what we are selecting and where we are and what we are getting inspired for, because not everything is meant for everybody. So while we are building a company, we're in the formation of the state. We have various stages, right? Forming, norming, performing, and then, of course, we disintegrate as well, either into multiple other subsidiaries or multiple other companies. But that is how we tend to build the organization up. So we need to think where we are. And of course, coming back to the point, we have to be absolutely sure of what is relevant to us and drive to that. And the distinction between PMS and OKR needs to be understood fairly well by everyone who is engaged in the system. So these are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Yes. And maybe one add-on to this, tools is a very good thing, but just to use a tool because of the tool, just to control, right? I think at the end, it should be a motivation for the employee that everybody can see he or she has done something and get something done. And if you have a regular call in which the people come together and present their results, this is motivating them and driving them to more results and more engagement and motivation.